Hello everyone. So in this tutorial I'm going to be creating a realistic landscape procedurally. We're going to procedurally generate it using modifiers and shaders. Let's go and create a new file, just general. Let's delete the cube, let's add in a mesh and then a plane. Let's scale it up by something like 5, should be good. And then we're going to subdivide this. Let's see, we could go to something like 15, should be good for now. We can always raise it up later. We need to go to cycles, and so let's go to feature set and set this to experimental. And I'll show you why this is important later on. So also GPU for faster rendering objects is good, and we may need experimental because we may use micro displacement depending on which workflow we use. And I think I'm going to create the shader, and it may not need it, but I'd rather enable it in case I use it later. Okay, so let's start working on the modifiers. So we're going to go into the modifier stack, and let's just add in a subdivision surface. Let's make it simple. Let's bring that to 2, and that should be good for now. We can always do adaptive, but yeah, let's do adaptive because it'll make things faster. Let's save this and name it procedural landscape. Save the file. Okay, and let's go to rendered. So we just got a plane here. Now let's add in some displacement. So we're going to find that modifier, and that should be right around here somewhere. Displace, and we need to add in a new texture. Let's add in, let's see, any of these work pretty good for this, but we could do something like, let's do clouds. Clouds is a good one for starting with, and then we're going to right click that and shade smooth. And already we got something going on, but this needs to be turned up more to get a better geometry. Let's bring that to like 4. Strength needs to be brought down, and I want to add in an empty, so I'm going to press in Shift A, empty, and this is to control the coordinates. So I'm going to just click on the mesh, and then I'm going to select coordinates and then change that to object, and then as the object that determines the coordinates will be the empty. So this will allow me to scale up the empty, and then the texture scales up with it, or if you move the empty, the texture will move with it. And this is very helpful for controlling your texture. If you move it up or down, it'll change in the Z dimension, which is up and down, which gives it a nice random look. But let's just scale it up a little bit more, something like that. This way you don't have to keep jumping back and forth between the texture and the modifier, unless you want to change some of these settings. So let's go back to the modifier. Could change the mid-level, but I think that's good for now. Let's bring that strength up, and let's also bring up the scale, and let's scale this up by 4. No, actually, yeah, let's try 4, because we need big geometry for a large landscape. But then of course we got to scale this up more, so we're going to scale that up more. Something like that's not bad. Kind of looks landscapey, sort of. Let's bring the scale down. Now this is where things get a little bit more complicated, so let's bring up the levels viewport to like 6, then this to 6, and this is where you can kind of do things that would look cool. Yeah, so let's just add in, let's add in some like like, I don't know, like what you would call them, like valleys, I guess. So we're going to add in another texture to do this. So let's go in and add in another displacement texture. And remember, modifiers are always read top to bottom, so your next modifier will come after the first. So displace again. And let's go ahead and maybe do magic texture. And I'm not sure how this is going to look. A lot of it comes down to experimentation and seeing what gives you an interesting result. That has to be that one. Okay, that's definitely not what we want. So let's bring down that strength a little bit. And we can also make the coordinates determined by the empty again. But we might not want to do that. Let's just think we could scale it here. Maybe the magic texture is not ideal. We got a bunch of other options like wood, which is not going to be a good one. Marble, maybe. I mean magic. No, marble. Marble gives a kind of interesting look, but not sure if I want that. We got Musgrave, which looks really cool, and that will actually be one I'm considering using. Let's go through some of the other options. Stooky. Nah. So I think I'm gonna go with the Musgrave texture, and remember that this is being applied on top, so you can always reverse these and see what kind of results you'll get. And this is way too strong, so let's go to like 0.02. Now we're getting something kind of interesting, but let's go and reverse these again. Okay, so now we got the other texture affecting it first. So that's the one we applied before. Oh no, I just flipped it. So yeah, the new texture is the one on the bottom. And let's just adjust these modifiers in the stack to see what we get here. Okay, we're getting some interesting results going on. Now, not all the geometry is perfect. There is some issues, but it kind of looks pretty cool. Now, I'm not exactly too happy with this because I want some more variations. So maybe what I'll do is... Yeah, it seems like it's kind of messing up the geometry too much. So the good news is that if your geometry gets messed up from all of too many things going on, like the two displacements are not exactly working correctly, there is a good way to fix this. And what I tend to do is just add in a smooth modifier. And let's just find that. So that should be smooth, and we can just go to repeat. Let's do like 10, and look at that, just like that, most of the mesh errors go away. And there's still a few problems, and these can be adjusted by kind of just tweaking things here. Now it's not so bad, and that's kind of looking like a landscape. Let's add in another modifier and just keep going with this. So there's some really interesting stuff you could do. We could try waves. Look at that. Now we got kind of interesting. We can of course bring the... I gotta bring the narrowness down. And now you kind of got like a canyon in the center. That's certainly something that looks pretty cool. You can bring down the height. So now you kind of got like something that would be good for a volcano. So that's what we can go with. Let's just adjust let's just adjust the width. Maybe not have it so narrow. And the width. Oh, I see. So it's kind of like it's putting a bunch of waves together if you bring it lower. Yeah. That's interesting. Alright, so we're just going to leave that up. And we also have fall off, which you could try changing, see what it does. So the main setting I'm going to be doing is adjusting his narrowness and height. So I don't want this to become too noticeable. I think something like this is pretty good. And start position on time, I'm just going to leave that because it's not an animation. So this should be good. And I think I'll leave that on 5 to speed everything up. Okay, so let's add in some more modifiers. Let's see, so we can do some more stuff here. So let's add in another thing. Let's add in displacement. Displace, and let's try going with distorted noise, and we could see what options we got here. And one thing I think would look pretty interesting is Voronoi F2. And let's just make sure that we got this texture selected as the last one. So it's named, let's say, distorted noise. I don't want that one to be connected to the other one, so I just click there. So yeah. Okay, that is certainly interesting. It's going crazy though, so yeah, we definitely have to adjust some stuff here. Alright, so let's bring up the size. I believe I want to bring it up, and then apply this. We just apply a hint of it. It kind of looks like obsidian stone, like a volcano carved it out, which is very interesting. Like it's almost like a volcanic landscape, and that's pretty cool. Let's see. Let's just keep adjusting this. Whoops, sorry about that. And one thing we could do is bring up the size even further. Let's go with, I'm not sure actually how large I want to go with this, because it gives different effects. Oh wow, okay. Maybe I want to bring it down actually. Let's try bringing it down to like 0.01. Okay, we definitely don't want to go down. So it needs to go larger. Let's bring it up to like 100 and see how this looks. Okay, that's certainly interesting. So before and after, I think that gives a nice, that looks pretty nice. And I could bring that down a little bit. Let's go to like 50. And now we could bring up the subdivision levels. Could add in a little more detail, but I think we might be good at 5. Let's just put in another smooth modifier to speed this, to fix the geometry. And then we're going to work on shading. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna add in the material. Let's see, we got that. That looks pretty nice. So let's just add it. The smoothing. Smooth. And we could add in again like a factor like 10. Gives a pretty good result. Okay, so let's add in a material. And let's just call this lava / obsidian. And we're going to switch over to cycles on the top view so we can kind of see what we're rendering. And let's adjust our lighting. I'm going to do a very simple setup. Let's just bring up the sun lamp, turn it into an area, bring it back, and bring up the size to something like 10. And bring up the brightness to something like 50, or actually, we don't even have to use a lamp. Let's just go to world, background, and we're going to create a new world. So let's go to shader editor, world, and then we're going to go to sky texture. We could just simply plug that in to the background. And yeah, that gives us a nice texture. Let's make it something like sunset. So sun elevation, bring it down. And I think that looks pretty good. Could bring it down a little more. Maybe I want it up though. Let's bring up the ozone to something like 2, maybe less dust. And that's generally what I do. And maybe since it's going to be a volcano, maybe we don't want it so bright outside. Maybe let's bring down the strength to 0.2. And I think that looks okay. Sun size, let's bring it to 2. And sun intensity, let's bring that way down, 0.2. And then that could actually go to 0.05. And then world intensity, let's bring it back up to like 0.5. Just gonna continually adjust this and see what gives the best result here. That's pretty good. Okay, so back to the materials. Let's go ahead and start creating the obsidian. So I'm looking at obsidian on the other part of my monitor here, and it looks like it's got like it's got like a shiny gloss-like material. So let's just add in, let's just make this dark like this, and we'll turn down the roughness to like, let's say 0.3, and we're going to need to add in some roughness, bump and roughness, but mostly bump. So we're going to add in a bump node, and we're going to also go to a noise texture. And before I do anything, I want to press tab when the mesh is selected and press U, Smart UV Project, and that will just allow you to use UV mapping for the noise texture. So I'm going to press texture coordinate and then set this to UV. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control Shift to select this and then click, and I'm going to add in the color ramp. And I'm going to scale this way up, and then I'm going to add in a mapping node. And I'm going to bring up the scale. And in fact, I may have not even need to do the UV unwrapping. I'm just going to go with the object coordinates and see how it works. Yeah, so we're getting a look like that, and that actually looks pretty good. So I think that's okay. Let's bring up detail to 8, and maybe we can change this, but I think it's good. Maybe bring down the scale a little bit more. I think something like 50 for the scale is a good value to go with. Okay, and now let's just add that into the strength of the bump. And then the main shader, and let's see what we're getting here, and that should be the height. Okay, so that's interesting. Maybe it's a little bit too large. Let's go to 150. That's nicer, I think. That definitely looks volcano-like. Now, I'm looking at Obsidian now, and I'm thinking maybe we could change the displacement and make it more like cubic shaped, if that makes sense. So I'm going to just adjust some of these and see what we get just by adjusting some of these displacement maps. Wow, okay. Turn this down just to get faster viewport feedback. And you may change these settings and see what gives you the best results. Yeah, let's see, I had these two previous displacements. Okay, that's interesting. Oh wow, this one is not actually... Is this one working right? Ah, okay. This one's not connected to the right one. Actually, I think I'm going to change this. I'm going to give this one a new one, and I'm going to make this one just a Voronoi texture. And I'm going to change the type to be... Let's just go through these options. Let's see what Chebyshev I think might be interesting. I'm trying to get more of a cubic look. Definitely requires some experimentation to see what I can get here. In fact, I actually know one that might be really good, and that's the cell noise, and I gotta find it. Believe it's here still, so I'm just gonna go through these options and see if I could find it. I mean, it would be a shame if it's not available. Oh, there it is. Okay. Alright, there's cell noise. Yes, that's what I wanted. Okay, that's gonna work out well. Alright, so this is gonna go last. I want to apply this texture last because I want that to happen at the end of everything. And yeah, that's kind of what I wanted. Alright, so I don't want it too much, but a little bit would be nice. Oh wow, this is not the right one, is it? I need to adjust cell noise. There it is. Okay, so let's see what we can do with this one. I think I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and stronger, maybe. There we go. And now if I bring up the displacement, that's too much. Kind of looks like a galaxy or something, or futuristic spacecraft, or spaceland. That's interesting, but it's too strong. Let's bring that down to 0.05. It's like Rebels. Maybe 0.1. And now to break that up a little bit, because it's too much, let's just add one more texture on top. Displacement. And let's see, we can do something. We can make a new texture. Texture 002 is what it should be right here. I want to make sure that's separate so it doesn't interfere with the one previous to that. Let's go with Voronoi Crackle and see what that does. Now I'm not sure if this one's going to look nice. We'll see what we get out of it. And strength is way too high. 0.1. Let's try. And back to that. Okay, so I see what it's doing. It's definitely not the kind of texture that I think I wanted. Okay, is this the... Oh, this is the cubic texture. Oh, okay. I meant to... Yeah, it gets very confusing when I have a lot of these textures in. I always, yeah, I'm supposed to be adjusting this one, not this one. Let's close this one up so I don't get confused. And let's just bring that back up to point. What was the value before? Let's see. I think it was supposed to be 0.05 or 0.1. And then I'm going to just bring up the size of that one. Yeah, I'm going to bring that up to like 0.12. 0.15. Something like that's fine. And then I'm just going to undo that. Well, I'm just going to hide this here so I don't get confused. Or I can enable it, but just make sure this is minimized. And then I'm going to adjust this one. Certainly gives an interesting effect, but I'm afraid it's not the one that looks too good. So I'm going to change it. That should be here. Texture 005. There it is. Let's make this one. I want to add randomness in, like clouds. Just make it very basic. And I'm going to apply that after the last one. And make it very weak, just a little bit. Just a little. And maybe make the one previous to that even less strong. actually think this isn't the best way to do it. Hello everyone. So off camera, I added in a lot more displacement. Like one I added was distorted noise, and this just made everything, added more randomness, and I wanted to kind of add in like ways that the lava could like flow down and kind of make it look more realistic. So I kind of just did this off camera because it took a lot of time, but yeah, so spend your time adding in these displacements. It really enhances the realism. You don't have to sculpt this by hand. None of this I actually sculpted. This is all done procedurally using modifiers, and when modifiers are layered on each other on top, it adds a lot of realism. So definitely want to spend time with that because it gives you really good results. And I just left the subdivisions at 6, and that's a pretty good result. Yeah, so let's go ahead and start working on the material. So I added in a few nodes. Principled, I added in a bump, a noise texture, color ramp, and a mapping, and the texture coordinate. So let's go ahead and start working on the rocks itself. So to do this, I just set the noise texture here, connected to mapping, then to texture coordinate with object coordinates, set the scale to 150, detail to 8, and that should be good. Now if I press Control Shift and view here, let's go to rendered, and you see we're getting an interesting result. I'm trying to make Obsidian here, like that nice rock material. That certainly looks interesting, but not sure it's what I'm going for, so I think we need to also add in some more textures. We could bring up the scale a little bit more, like 200, and we could also bring this up to like 12, kind of make it look more stretched out maybe, and okay, that certainly looks interesting. So let's go ahead and add in a Voronoi texture. And we're going to mix these two together, in fact. So let's go and give this an object coordinate. And we got a few options here. We're going to use distance to edge. And we're going to scale this to something I believe like around here is pretty good. Now we need to add in a color ramp. Let's bring these color ramps close together, and the left side here, then bring up the right a little bit here. Something like this should be pretty good. Maybe a little bit more of the dark colors could be enhanced, something like that. And we're going to also add that in and multiply that, in fact, by the other texture. So I'm going to just add in a math node. This is for our displacement, and then that's going into the bump. And we're going to multiply that by this and see what we get. And yeah, it's actually working. You can kind of see it if we zoom in. It's right there. Scale has to be brought up a lot, so we're going to adjust that right now. Let's go to something like 200. That's interesting. Now we're starting to get something that looks a little bit better. Maybe 100 is fine. 100 I think is pretty good. Now we don't just want this texture over the whole entire thing. And actually, let's bring up the bump and make it a little bit stronger. Let's bring it up to 0.5, distance to 0.5. I mean to 5, just like that. This is looking actually really pretty good. And then what we need to do is use a mask. And what a mask is it's going to tell a texture to not apply itself wherever the color is darker. So you can use a mask and generate it with the textures, and it's less complex than it sounds, trust me. And I'll show you guys, I'll try to explain it as much as detail as possible so you guys can understand it. So we're going to add in like, just going to use a standard noise texture, nothing crazy. Connect that to object coordinates, click on this, let's make the scale a little larger, color ramp, bring up the dark colors, and something like that is pretty good, maybe a little bit scaled down a little bit more. And I don't want the texture to be completely gone here, so these black areas are where the texture will not apply. So let's just kind of bring it down to like, let's make the bottom level like 0.1, so it will never go below 0.1. And then the top, we also don't want it to ever apply itself entirely, so let's do 0.75 for the top. And we will use this let's instead go to a mix RGB. We're going to replace this node here, set this one to multiply, connect that to the bump, delete the previous one, and we're going to use this as the factor of how much to multiply it. So if we zoom in now, when we look at this, you can see there's some areas where it doesn't show up so much, and in some areas it really shows up. And you can adjust this color ramp, like pulling up this slider will make more of the original texture show. But if you pull it back, you'll get some of the new texture we just created. And I think something like this is good, kind of just mixes it in, but not overdoing it. Yeah. Alright, and let's also create a roughness map. So roughness, where is roughness? Oh, we got the, there we go, got the color ramp here. Got the nodes here, let's just plug that into here, and let's remap those values. And for minimum roughness, I'm going to say 0.1 is 1.5 maybe is a good value. For maximum, I'm going to go with something like 0.75 probably would be good. And that may be too rough. Oh, I plugged that into the base color. Okay, that actually looks pretty good. I could bring this one down. I think I'm gonna leave it like that. I'm actually pretty happy with that. Now, I don't want this to be just pure black because it's gotta have some color into it. Let's just bring it up. Maybe bring it to a slightly brownish but dark color. And in fact, to add in some more complexity to the shader, but not too much complexity, because I don't want it to become too hard to understand. So I'm going to just add in another mask that affects the color. So we can just add in, and to make things easier, let's use the previous one we used, the previous mask generator, which is this one, and we'll just use that as the factor for a mix shader, mix RGB. Plug this in here, got this. Let's make the first one brownish, darkest brown, then the second one just pure black. And you see that we're getting more of a varied result, which is nice. And we can always duplicate this color ramp and separate it from the original one and use that as the factor instead, so we can adjust it. We can maybe bring these two closer together to increase the contrast. Thinking something like that's pretty good. And then plug that into the base color. Now, do I want so much brown? I think I don't want it to be too much, because this is a volcano. Something like that is perfect, I think. Something like this. This is pretty good. All right. Oh, this is too much brown. It looks like rust. So we need to bring that. We need to get rid of so much of that brown. Look. Just a slight amount should do fine. Yeah. Maybe a little bit more would be okay. That's fine, I think. Alright, so we got the landscape done. Now let's work on the lava. Alright, so a little more complex to set up, but it's not too difficult. So we're going to first of all add in a mix shader. Mix shader. And let's see, I gotta think about how I'm gonna set this up. So, okay, so we're gonna add in a noise texture. Noise texture. And I'm thinking that I'm going to actually be using a volumetric shader for this, which should give a really unique result. Yeah. So let's add an emission shader, and we'll make it lava colored with color ramp. And lava generally goes from reddish to orangish. So let's just add that in now. Left side could be orange, or let's go to red, reddish, and then getting brighter towards more of a yellowish orange. We'll use a noise texture to drive that. So we got this. Scale it up. Distort it. Scale it down maybe a little bit more to like 5. Bring up the detail. That should be good. Now, vector and connect it to the original mapping. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I actually want to mix these coordinates in. So we have this previous mapping, and these coordinates that we originally used are very helpful actually, because we got some of the original stretching of the Obsidian rocks. And if we use this texture and then mix it in with just a normal mapping texture without the scale of the X value set to 12, and then we mix these together, we're going to be mixing the coordinates together. And this is going to create a very unique result. So we'll just add in a mix RGB again. And we'll mix these two in. Like that. And set that into the noise texture, and then we can control how much each one contributes to the result. This one should be 1, 1, 1. So yeah, now we're kind of mixing between the two of them. I think something like that is pretty good. So I set it to 0.85. I'm gonna leave it like that for now. And now we're going to add in a principal volume shader. Now, I'm thinking we are going to have to add this in. We have to add this in a different way. Because as you can see, nothing happens. So we're going to have to add in this volume part separately. And what we're going to do is we're just going to select all these nodes and select this one, this one, and then we're just going to press Control C. Actually, yeah, I got them all selected. Control C. Then we're going to create a new object. Shift A, mesh cube, scale it up. That will be what our volume texture goes on. And then we're going to we're going to create a new texture and then Control V. We got the setup now there. You can delete that. Go back to the original one and we don't need this, so we're just going to set it back up how it was before. We don't need any of these here. Just like how it was before, should be good. Then we're going to select the cube, add in the volume texture, and okay, so we need to adjust this. Let's see, so mission color, and we don't want it applied everywhere. Should be emitting light. Oh, there we go. Okay. So it's kind of there, but it's not there yet. I want to bring this down. It's getting there. Alright, we're kind of getting a volcanic look now. But we still have some more settings we gotta keep adjusting here. And we can always just bring the bottom of the cube. You can either like scale that down or just bring that up. It doesn't really matter. As long as you can see it here, it's fine. Yeah, so we need to adjust some more settings. So, okay, so we can use this noise texture to adjust this density. And we'll see what we can do with this. A lot of this trial and error. So let's go to color ramp. Because we don't want the lava everywhere. Kind of want to control it better. Let's see, it's not exactly working how I planned on it to. And let's see why that's happening. Oh, it's because my viewer node is plugged into material. I think that's what's going on. Let's see, why is that? That's weird. It's almost like it's applying it when it shouldn't be applied. Is that because Alright, I'll be right back. I'm going to try to figure this out. Okay, so I got it figured out. It was actually a very simple issue. Instead of connecting it to the density, I had to connect it to the emission strength, and then the color to this color ramp, so that was the issue. So I got this color ramp up here, And you notice if we view the principal volume, it still doesn't look right because the material is not, it doesn't have any textures yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring down the scale of the noise texture to like 0.1. And now you see we're starting to get some interesting results. And so this is where it becomes interesting. So let's actually bring up the strength of the top one to like 40 so that it's even brighter. We could change this scale, make it look lava-like, and I think that looks pretty good. But let's see, we can mix in, I think we want to mix in less of that original one. Let's go to 0.95. And we can apply even more distortion possibly. Maybe not so much. Yeah, so that's certainly interesting. Now if you really want to get crazy with it, what you could do is go add in another mix and then use something like let's see, like a moose grave texture to mix in some of those coordinates, connect that to object, and then bring that to this second input of this. And now you see we're getting even more crazy unique results, and that actually looks really cool. Let's bring up the detail of that moose grave texture all the way up, dimension down. To preview that, black urinity can be lower. Something maybe like that. Scale could be like that, and let's see how that looks. Awesome. I think that looks perfect. It's got a lot of randomness in it now, and it's really starting to look lava-like. Maybe one thing I could change is bring this first one down to be more to the first texture, to make it more of that stretched look, like it's kind of like it's like flowing. And yeah, I'm actually going to go with this. So now it comes down to rendering, and actually there's one more setting here. So we're going to add in some smoke to it too, and we're going to adjust the color of the smoke, bring up the density, and then we're going to change we're just going to make a little bit of it, something like 1. Going to put in the value, and that just adds in some of that extra like realism. Now this is looking really nice, I think. Now it's time to add in a camera, so let's add in our camera. Now we can just find a nice place to render it, and I think I'm going to go with something like this. So we can kind of see the lava flowing. Don't want to be too close up because I want to kind of get a whole view, but make sure you don't view outside of the viewport. And if you want, you can always rotate the camera. Kind of go with something like this. I think is good. And I noticed there that this plane looks a little bit too uniform here, so I'm just going to adjust that really quickly. And the only thing I have to do is just add in subdivision simple. I'm going to do the same thing as before, just add in a simple displacement. And we'll just add in noise, distorted noise. and it's kind of displacing the geometry now. Can bring up that strength a little bit more. 0.1. I'd like to see it in the regular view here. Oh wow, it's not even applying right. Oh, it's reversed. Okay. No big deal. And the size is way too small. Let's go to 10 or 5. Bring up the strength. Right click, shade smooth. I think something like that is going to be a little, yeah. And that kind of gives waves into the lava. So I could show you a comparison of before and after. So before we did that, it looked like that. And that's too strong now. I'd like to kind of have it gentle more. So now you kind of got some waves going on in the lava. Like up here, flows down. Kind of flows down the canyons, and that's kind of interesting. So I'm going to press Control numpad 0 to place the camera at this angle. I'm going to just rotate it a little bit more and change the focal length to 28. Get a wider view angle here. It's good for landscapes. Now I don't want to get that edge. There we go. That's perfect. And after compositing, this will look even better. So I'm going to set that to GPU compute samples. I'm going to do 64 for now, so I can render it without it taking too long. Let's see, we got, I like to always adjust these settings. So film, that's good. 256 tiles. That should be good. Color management, make sure that's filmic. And let's make sure we're also in optics, which we are, and let's start the render. And we'll see how long this takes. Okay, so it's rendering really fast. Oh, one more thing. Make sure that you have your subdivision as the same for the render as it is for the viewport. That's extremely important. Like this one I have to change to 6. I noticed that in the render it didn't look the same. So that's something you want to watch out for. Very important. There we go, that looks much better. Now I could have gone even more crazy with this lava and added glass like into it that used the same texture, and that would kind of make it look even more realistic, but it would take a lot of time. But yeah, that's what I did on my Instagram, but this looks pretty good, especially with the compositing we're going to quickly do. So we're going to quickly add in some basic compositing effects. So let's just add in, let's see, what do we do? We got glare. First, we always need glare. And I'm going to re-render this because I didn't have the denoising enabled. So I'm going to make sure that I have the diffuse direct pass. That's in these options here, passes. Diffuse color, I'm sorry. And the normal pass. And that should be all I need, so we're going to just re-render that again, and it won't take long. Takes a little bit longer, but not too bad. Okay. Alright, and turn on the backdrop, add in denoise. but we're not going to be using it now until the end because it slows down the render, the preview time. And let's change this from streaks to fog glow. Let's add in size of 9. Now, we don't want to really brighten up the sky though, so we're going to just add in a simple box mask. That's very easy. Let's add in the image to the bottom so we can kind of see what we're masking out. Let's bring up the Y value. So we're blocking out the sky, and then we'll use that mask and use it as a factor of where to apply the glare. Well, we're going to add in mix RGB, and we're going to multiply that mask. I think this is the way it's done. Maybe that one should be not. Let's see, that's not. I think it's got to be reversed. Or what I could do very simply is just invert it. There we go. Now we're only going to be adding the glare to this part because we don't want to add it to the sky. Now there's other ways to do this, like with render passes and stuff, but this is the simplest way. So now we're adding in that glare. Let's bring up the, let's set mix so it's only showing the glare. And then let's go in and add in another, duplicate this one, and then take our original image, plug it into the top, then add that glare back onto the top, and set that to add. So glare always gets added. And we'll bring that threshold up to 0.5. We can bring this factor to 4 to add even more if we really wanted to. Maybe 2 is a good value. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. So let's add in some sunbeams. Again, we'll take in the original image with the box mask applied, and we will add in the sunbeams effect. And let's kind of bring it down so that the lava kind of like is making like an effect, a nice effect. Bring up the ray left, maybe something like this. I'm not really sure how it's going to look. We'll see. We'll duplicate this. Then we'll take that to the top, and then we'll add this back in onto the bottom. Yes, that looks very nice. Is it a little bit strong? I think it is. So I'm going to bring that down. Bring this down to maybe 1. Maybe just 0.5. That looks good. And now we have color balance. Set that to offset power slope. And never use the lift gamma gain, that's not scene referred, so it won't look as nice. So let's see, let's adjust these settings here. Before, then after. Okay. That's not looking bad. And I think this needs some color correction because the background, it just doesn't look volcanic enough. Let's make it like a more of a reddish. Yeah. Reddish kind of look. Something like that. And you can go really crazy with this. Get something more like that if you really wanted to. But I think I'm not going to go too much with that. Now, I'm going to add in one more effect, and it's just going to be general glow. That's going to be just one more thing. So we could just do that really quickly. Do that with water. That goes before here. And we will use the one previous to that, which is this one. And we'll set that up to like 100 or 300. Maybe 200. That should be good. And I would like to set the X value to be a little bit larger and this one to be a little bit smaller to make it more spread out. And then we can always set this to be added onto the top. So another mix shader. And we'll add this one right to the top. And that's too much. Let's just add in a little bit. And let's say we want to just color that all red. So we can simply add in a multiply. I'm sorry, mix RGB. Mix. And then multiply that by the color red. And then that glare will be colored red. And we can bring that up. And maybe we can bring up the glare size, 400 or 450 by 200. By 300 actually. 5, maybe even more, 600. Maybe not so much, maybe 0.4. That looks great. I think we're going to leave it like that. And yeah, that's how I'm going to leave this video off. So this will be on my Patreon. This file, I will have this uploaded by tomorrow. And if you're a subscriber, on my Patreon, that links in the description, you will get this file and you can use this in your own projects. You can feel free to change it. You can look at all the nodes. Everything will be included. Remember, everything's procedural, so there are no images. It's all node-based. So yeah, you can use this in your own projects, add things to it. Feel free to do anything you want with this file. And yeah, I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope this helped you guys. I'm going to create a lot more tutorials. I got a little busy the past few weeks, but I'm back onto creating more content for you guys to watch. Yeah, thank you guys for watching.